I swear to God, bro. Elon Musk, if you're watching this, fuck Starlink, fuck you. Like, we got serious problems. Cause every time I start stream, y'all want to do an update. Y'all know I stream at these times. Man. That little key, like, we finna switch to YouTube, cause like, bro, that shit killed my vibe on this shit, I'm not gonna lie.
You a shy / socially awkward nerd who may or may
Oh yeah. The current state of romance anime.
not be cripplingly addicted to anime? Yes? Are you looking for a girl that's popular, charming, and attractive, but also has a secret?
Oh yeah, hold on. Gotta change my category.
Side where she likes the same things you do? How does he know? Are you still a teenager in high school? Well, why not try your
Hell nah. I'm 4 years removed.
local romance anime where we have all the hot single girls in your area looking for a shy, lonely nerd today? Where do I sign up? The romance genre is an absolute staple of anime and manga, and you know why we watch it. The love triangle.
Yeah, bro, and it's been on a downhill decline for the past like 6, maybe longer years. Like, it's all just like slop, like harem slop.
It's the hand-holding, the first confession, the drama. This is why we keep coming back time and time again. And look, if you're a regular viewer, you probably know the types of romances that I tend to gravitate towards. That's right. The respectable ones. But recently there's been a subgenre that has emerged that has dominated the entire space that I've been struggling to find a name to properly describe. It's been called a lot of things, but the best I can come up with—
Hold on, let me try to guess what it is. What is it, like? I don't know. I'm gonna say it's like something like quintessent, that quintuple. You know what I'm talking about.
with right now is the
Whatever
modern romance power fantasy. You know,
I feel like I'm right because that's like power fan, like that's the power.
It's the one where you have the guy and he's the quiet guy who's probably a nerd and likes anime. I wonder who that's meant to represent. And he has a thing for the popular girl in class, and sometimes she's blind, and sometimes she's Russian, and sometimes she's his sister. And I don't want you to take this the wrong way, because as a seasoned isekai connoisseur,
Orimo, bro, if you saw that, when did Orimo come out? Let me see. Cause that's probably about when I watched it. 2010. Yeah. No, I didn't watch that when I was 7. I probably watched it in like 2014. Yeah. Bad. Don't watch that. Well, I can't stop you.
just because I call something a power fantasy doesn't mean it's inherently bad or can't come with great writing and well-written characters. Like, I really enjoyed Nagatoro. Dress Up Darling was amazing as well, and then they started making more and more. Alright, we're still going. Okay, there's still more. Okay.
Yeah, that's the problem. They keep on if a show does good, they just keep milking it, like, especially with these types.
Okay, that's good. I think we're good now. Okay, we're still going. Okay, that's more. That's good. I'm good. That's enough slices. I thought the trend was going to peak a while ago, and yet somehow, some way, it is only getting more popular. I mean, just look at this season alone. And look, I'm gonna be real. A lot of these times I've glazed over these shows because most of the time they're always a bit too comfy, a bit too drama-free. Not enough spice compared to the romance anime I grew up with, but I needed to know why this has become such a dominating force in the space. So I thought I'd give it a second chance because
yeah, the last one I watched. Oh shit, I'm rewinding the video, I think. Yeah, there we go. Is this where I wanted it? Yeah, I think. Anyways, bro. The last one I watched was Alia, the Russian one. I didn't finish it, but it was decent.
For the modern anime fan wish fulfillment show. But you know what is my ultimate power fantasy? Hitting.
What is this? Honkai? Yeah, sorry Garnt. You saw the redeem code? There you go.
Okay, so I'll be completely real. Out of the 3 shows I watched, this was the one that came closest to playing out like the romance wish fulfillment playbook. Anime has been in a full-on Gyaru renaissance recently, and this time we got not 1, but 2 of them at the same time. They seem like your stereotypical popular anime girls in class, except nah, not these girls. They're not like other girls, which must be true because the opening says so.
I'm not like those other girls you're used to.
Why do you drink
because
like
you see,
that?
One of them is secretly a nerd who's into anime stuff, which is exactly like every other anime girl.
I'm like those other girls you're used to.
And who's our protagonist this time? Of course, it's the shy, unpopular anime nerd, but from the get-go, he makes it clear that he's not like other otaku. Nuh-uh, he's different from every other otaku protagonist because he likes anime for girls.
I'm not like those other
otaku
you're used to.
And what would you know, one of the other girls is also secretly into the exact same show he is. So, after building up the courage, he presses her about it, and they form an unlikely friendship. The other girl also gets involved, and they all start hanging out, bonding over nerd shit. Then, of course, the 2 girls start developing feelings for him. Bada bing, bada boom, there are 2 Marin Kitagals in your room. It's a very recognizable formula that's been done so many times before, so that begs the question, am I really going to enjoy this show because we got not just 1 but 2 Gyarus this time? Yes. The answer is yes. Look, I'm not gonna lie to you. I'm a simple man. I see 2 peak Gyaru designs with likable personalities in a show with great production values from your typical romance, and I'm gonna fuck with it. I mean, just look at his opening, man. It's got the colors, it's got the movements, it's got the vibes, and I don't even like K-pop. But shit, if we get more S-tier Gyarus, I'll become the biggest Stray Kids, Black...
Yeah, this is a skip for me.
Pink, BTS, TXT listener, I don't even know what I'm saying. These are just letters to me. Have I seen this exact play-by-play before? Yes. Did this show do a lot to surprise me? No. But it was just really well executed. And I think the main reason I think this show works really well is that it gives us a love triangle with equally strong contenders on both sides. Too many romance anime come to their stories pretending to have a love triangle that looks like this, but you know, a lot of the time it actually just looks like this. Here, both girls get introduced at the same time. They both have their equal charms, and they share an equal amount of screen time with the protagonist. I came into this with the mindset of it being your typical comfort romances, but with two girls this time, but the more episodes I watched, the more I've realized what this show truly is. This is a harem anime with only two options. And boy, now you're entering my playing field. As much as I had a good time with it though, I gotta be honest, it did have its fair share of moments that I like to call shit I see in romance anime that makes me want to become a grass toucher. Main character creaming their pants over the slightest bit of female touch. Oh man, alright lads, I think it's been a while since I've gone out for a run, yeah? Protagonist having a full-blown hallucination thanks to smelling a woman's scent in his room. Oh shit, there was a park this close to where I live? How the fuck have I not been there yet? Anime character having a full-on anxiety attack over the thought of an indirect kiss. Hello? Yeah, sorry, mate. I'm a bit busy. I'm sending off job application.
Real shit, bro. I kept seeing people at work with Jersey Mike's cups, and I'm like, bro, where did you get that? And they'd be like, yeah, there's a Jersey Mike's in where I live, and I didn't know where it was. Like 2 months later, probably 2 or 3 weeks ago, I found out where it was. Plain sight next to a Target.
One thing I will say that stood out though was the show's focus on friendship. Our main boy Takia shares a different type of friendship with each girl. With Amane, they have this shared interest in a niche hobby they can bond over that they can't really do with anyone else, and it's only really around each other that they can truly let their passions come out, aka the introvert friend. And then with Ijichi, you have someone who has totally different hobbies and likes, but she takes a general interest in his interests. She learns about them, asks him about his fan art, but in turn she also brings him out into situations he normally wouldn't put himself in, and it's because of her that we see a new side to him, aka the extrovert friend. And it's this friendship that everyone, especially the girls, are afraid to mess with, because on Takia's side, bro doesn't even register them as a romantic partner. He's just ecstatic he can find people he can nerd out with about his favorite topic.
I'm telling you, bro. Evil light skin.
And though it's so blindingly obvious that the two girls know how each other feels towards Takia, there seems to be this unspoken agreement that no matter what happens, they're not going to let that affect their friendship with each other, reminding us that in the equal battlefield of love, the players can still look at each other and go, hey, you may be my competition, but you're not my enemy. I'll tell that to the average Messi and Ronaldo fan. And it was this focus on friendship first over romance that I started to notice in a lot of the other shows. Because moving on, let's throw high school out the window for a second and focus on a protagonist that is closer to my age. I mean, way older. Far, far, far older. So old I would never be able to relate to him. He's not that old, right guys? We're talking about Smoking Behind the Supermarket with You. Older viewers may remember I've already gassed up this title when it was a manga, and now that the anime is just released and I've seen so many posts discovering the Greek goth goddess that is Tayama, all I can say is,
yeah, I fucking told you so.
But I know the internet has given everyone the memory of a goldfish, so allow me to give you a refresher.
Yes?
The show follows Sasaki, aka Billy No Mate's full-on solitude maxing. He's your prototypical middle-aged Japanese salaryman. He works hard, frequently stays behind until go fuck yourself o'clock, where his only solace in life is seeing the smile of his favorite cashier at the supermarket, the angel in an apron Yamada. I think the only way we could describe him having a healthy work balance is if we use your mum as a counterweight. You can tell a lot about a man about what he buys at Tesco's after a long day of work, so let's see what our lad is picking up. Alright, looks like he's got some half-price daikon. Ooh, what else? Some mochi chips? I see you, big man. And oh yes, it's been a long day, so here comes a couple of cold ones. Respect. Oh damn, must have been a really long day of really long day of work. Okay, brother, okay, you can stop now, okay? Come on, brother, that's enough! On this one day,
Was
though,
that
Yamada
edited?
is nowhere to be found, so he
Was that edited? No. Was that in the real show, or did he do that?
has to find some other way to cope with his life.
500 cigarettes.
And who does he find wandering around in the smoking area? Yes, it's the sassy lassie Tayama.
何系かわからんけど強い見た目の子だなスーパーの従業員とは思えない
I wonder who she could be.
しかし雑すぎるだろう田山と山田って
And well, That's the show. Sasaki comes by the supermarket after work to smoke and shoot the shit with Yamada. I'm sorry, Tayama. Over time, they relax and open up. Their fondness of one another grows, and all the while, Tayama withholds the secret that she's actually his angel and his devil. So yeah, this is basically what happens if you put Senko-san and Call of the Night into a blender with a carton of Lucky Strikes. Blood's about to become the world-ranked #1 cancer speedrunner.
でももし医者に
Strikes. Blood's about to become the world-ranked #1 cancer speedrunner.
でももし医者にタバコやめろって言われたら
I just simply turn around and tell them to fuck off.
The reason I wanted to revisit this series was just to show that you don't always need to be in high school to get a little bit of cheeky power fantasy. Cause yes, as a teenager, you can fantasize about getting noticed by the popular girl in class, but you know, as an exhausted adult crashing out after your 9-to-5 grind, what man wouldn't want to vibe with a hot anime goth girl after hours, even if you have to speedrun cancer in the process? At face value, it doesn't take a genius to figure out what this show's appeal is. I mean, just look at her. Tayama's aesthetic is basically peak performance in the eyes of 90% of modern anime fans. She's what Michelangelo would come up with if you asked him to sculpt the perfect Reddit profile picture.
あんた貢がされているんですか
Yep.
And I don't know, there's just something about her that reminds me of someone else. I just can't quite put my finger on it. Oh. But you know, unlike all of us down bad degenerates, Sasaki is a gentleman. He's genuinely not here to creep on Yamada. He's just here for the vibes. In fact, not a single line of dialogue slips his lips, or even his internal monologues would suggest that he has any salacious intentions. That, or maybe Tayama just isn't his type.
お腹より腕が好きってか佐々木
Yep, that confirms it. He's got no interest in hitting on Tayama because his perfect girl is actually Geodude. Cause you know, while romance is down there as one of its main tags, I'd argue that's not the main driving force of this show at all. Sure, there's no shortage of blushes and moments of overt flirting from Yamada in this show, but they always feel at least organic and quite frankly are the weakest parts of the show for me. But what I do love about this show, and where I think it shines the brightest, is it being about two people who outwardly could not be more different, but in fact are very much the same. Because the focus of this series is on Sasaki, as a viewer it's easy to miss that Yamada is going through pretty much the same stress as he is. Outside of work, we don't see any friends or family of hers. The show puts great emphasis on all the nights Sasaki works until midnight, but brushes over the fact that Yamada is always there at the supermarket at that time as well. The show makes it very clear that he is as much of a comfort to her as both versions of her are to him.
しょうがないじゃん佐々木さん私の癒し枠なんだもん
何それ
山田さんのレジ並ぶ佐々木さんと同じだよ
Because the focus of the show is the time they spend together and their jobs, you rarely see anything outside of that.
Yeah, bro, this one's gonna be a hard pass for me too. I can see myself falling asleep to it though.
But the one time you do, you see both of them live in small apartments with near to no visible possessions, eating junk food. You see both of them live in small apartments with near to no visible possessions, eating junk food and drinking alcohol.
酒買って裏でタバコ吸って帰って寝る
From what we've seen so far, they simply don't have anything else. And for Yamada, it's perhaps even worse because the comforting third space they share between them is literally behind the very supermarket she works at. And it's this shared experience that makes their conversation feel so organic, like it's the actual stuff people in their shoes would actually shoot the shit about. This is a show where most of its content is just two people sitting in the same place every episode having a chinwag, and it's no small feat to making a formula like that engaging episode after episode. I recently rewatched the film Lost in Translation, and there's this one scene where Bill Murray's character is with the much younger Scarlett Johansson's character after a serendipitous meeting that has brought the two strangers together. And after a long night of exploring a foreign city, partying and getting lost, they are just laying in bed in an ungodly hour just talking about life. It's a moment that is so intimate, but not in any weird or romantic way. It's just two people from two different walks of life talking about their deepest feelings, their hopes, their dreams, their regrets, and it's two souls bonding. I love this scene so much. It's a moment that so perfectly captures those 3 a.m. deep conversations you have where all barriers are broken down. For some reason, you feel like opening up, and it's reciprocated by the person you're talking to, and you get to have the types of conversations you never usually would under any other circumstances. And it's these conversations that you'll remember between the two of you for years to come. Now, take this moment and make an entire show around it, and that is Smoking Behind the Supermarket with You, because it's episode after episode.
Yeah, I can see the appeal. I feel like I'm maybe 10 years removed.
Where you feel a small, subtle change in how much of a positive effect they have on each other's lives. Gradually, the scenes of Sasaki's work feel less and less stressful. Things that would have previously knocked him out, he begins to take in his stride. You can feel that because he's now got something more positive going in his life, everything else feels more positive because of it. Work is easier when there's something after work to look forward to. For a show of this type that is clearly targeted towards an older audience, I can definitely say that this is the vibe I goddamn crave, even more than having a straight up romance. But again, having a show with this setup that is more catered to a mature audience is certainly a rarity in anime, cause, going back to high school, if there was one show that on paper looked like it checked every box for the purest wish fulfillment romance power fantasy bingo this season, it was of course, I Made Friends with the Second Prettiest Girl in Class.
That's really the title of it.
ちょっと楽しみにしてることとかもない？
They're stroking my dick. I got lotion on my dick right now. I'm just stroking my shit.
Now, I went into the show with alarm bells ringing just reading the title alone, cause I Made Friends with the Second Prettiest Girl in Class. Like, is there a better shorthand name for this show? Pretty Girl, I Made Friends,
Only friend.
IMFWTTPGIC. Secondly, who in this high school decided that she was the second prettiest girl? Did all these girls compete in Miss Japan? Does the school have a pretty girl power ranking system? Are these boys taking the list and arguing who's prettier than Goku? Then episode 1 starts, and it's exactly the type of show you think.
I guess he decides that, right? So maybe you find out like from his perspective.
It's going to be. You got this guy, Maki, and just to give you a little bit of insight about the type of guy he is, we get introduced to him where he announces himself to the class as the guy with 0 hobbies who spends his weekends alone eating pizza, watching movies, and drinking Coke. I shit you not. Under skills, he puts gaming. Brother, what? Shit, man, why stop there? You could have added not showering, being broke, and giving your opinion on the new God of War game. Blood's Tinder profile probably has as much chance of finding a match as Italy does winning this year's World Cup. Sorry, Italy, I didn't mean for you to catch strays. I'm just really into the World Cup right now. But of course, this is anime, where having the personality of lukewarm beer makes you a full-on Giga Chad in the anime high school hierarchy, and Umi, the titular second prettiest girl in class, takes notice and follows him into a store so they can bond over B movies together, and from there they become friends, hanging out, watching movies.
Over B movies. Over B movie, bro. That tells you exactly what kind of character she is.
And playing video games. On the surface, everything about the show screams cheap romance wish fulfillment. You've got the loner main character, I'm sorry, introvert, who gets noticed by the popular girl in class that shares a secret interest with the guy that is used as a foundation for a friendship. And for bonus points, this girl is super desperate for a friend because she has no guy friends at all. She doesn't know how to talk to a guy properly, which is about as believable as Ryan Gosling being a boy failure in Project Hail Mary. Look, I get it. If I was a teenager still, I would have eaten this concept up. But how the hell am I going to get invested now that these characters are just your normal teenage high schooler?
Right.
Lord have mercy. We must stay focused, brothers. We must stay focused.
I was prepared to go on a rant on how this isn't too dissimilar to your cheap power fantasy isekais, except the fantasy is just a different genre. But then I kept watching, and it actually started to surprise me. And if you want to go into the show blind, here's where you can stop now because I will be spoiling some plot developments. A question people often ask me is what separates a good isekai from a bad isekai? To which I answer the exact same thing that separates a good anime from a bad anime. Good writing, good characters, and execution. It's no rocket science, there's no secret formula, and I Made Friends, sorry, executes this far better than what I was expecting. Umi and Maki are just 2 grounded characters who genuinely make a great couple that are far less tropey than the premise would make you believe. Premise aside, before any romance, this is what it feels like to see a real friendship form. You know that feeling of having that friend in your life? You know, it's your boy or girl that you're just really excited to be able to hang out with whenever you get the chance. It doesn't matter what activity you're doing or if you're doing any activity at all. You could be sitting next to each other, scrolling on your phones in complete silence while memes play on in the TV, but it's still a ball of time because damn, your vibes just fit together perfectly. this show captures that feeling. It's been a while since I've seen a relationship develop so naturally in a romance anime. It's not about the big romantic moments or gestures of love. It's about two people who just sincerely enjoy spending time with each other, forming a genuine human connection. If anything, it felt closer to a slice of life. This shit was moving so naturally, you don't even notice a specific point they start developing feelings for each other. They just kind of feel like they always have or always should have done. After a while, you just notice they casually start going on dates, holding hands, sleeping over, and the protagonist isn't going, "Oh my god, I'm holding hands with a girl. This is the first time I've ever felt a touch of a woman." Forget the will they, won't they? This is the when will they, because they already clearly like each other.
Yeah, that's the most annoying part. Like, every main character from this type of anime is like just the weirdest person.
Wait. What? Is that the big confession? I'm sorry, what episode are we on? Episode 5?
They know good and well you're not allowed to know that type of information. That shit is highly confidential until season 4.
Like 7 episodes left. The biggest
in the
surprise
season
is that
finale.
when it's less than halfway through, the series drops a bombshell and blows its metaphorical load by giving us the big confession that most romance anime build towards. Which is great to subvert expectations, but you see, my domestic girlfriend brain-rotted ass was like, that's it? Where's the conflict gonna come from? Where's the drama gonna come from? How are they gonna keep the story interesting? But this is where it really starts to show its true colors. Because instead of manufacturing conflicts, like adding a third girl midway through to introduce a love triangle and the audience thinks, oh great, here she comes. They've introduced the Italy of the best girl tournament. The conflict is instead internal. I thought the title was just going to be light novel clickbait, but one of the central driving forces of the plot is Umi dealing with her inferiority complex of being seen as the second best girl. Her friends use her as a stepping stone to get to know the real shining class star, Yu. She's never felt like she's truly had a real friendship where she's treated.
At the beginning I thought it was like the yellow girl. My fault. Not yellow girl. The one with yellow hair, blonde hair. I thought she was the main girl, but
as an equal and just
I guess
appreciated
we know
for who
who
she
the
really is. And
number
Maki
one
is right in the middle of a family divorce. His dad is seeing another woman. His mum is clearly fighting off a boatload of stress, and as a teenager, he's dealing with so much turmoil. He shuts down and emotionally distances himself from the problem and in turn, everything else in his life. None of this is presented in a dramatic or over-the-top way. It's muted, it's quiet, and it just feels real. This was a level of emotional depth I wasn't expecting from this show. Both of their troubles stems from a lack of ability to fully talk and communicate about their inner feelings, and it's the bonds they form with each other that helps them to gather the courage to confront these problems head on. Funnily enough, the romance is really just a byproduct of the two of them pushing to bring out the best in their respective partners to help them through these issues. And I think this is the exact point that I realize why these types of romance shows are so prevalent in the modern anime space. Because yes, you can argue that, hey, a lot of guys just want to get noticed by the popular girl in class and, oh my god, she likes anime and video games.
So this is the outro for the video, bro. Alright. Yeah. The current state of romance anime, bro, downward trend. I don't think it's gonna pick itself back up. I don't have much faith in these few. That last one, I'll give one episode. Next video.
evolution can get.
Oh, yeah. What happened to pre-contact dogs? Also known as the evolution of man's best friend.
Even in just a short amount of time, when directed by humankind. But that is perhaps a story best for another day. Breeders claim the Chihuahua can claim direct descent from dogs kept as pets by the ancient Toltecs, and maybe cultures more ancient than even them. As Columbus and the other European explorers that followed him learned, the Americas and its native inhabitants differed from Africa, Asia, and Europe in the sense they lack many of the domesticated animals familiar to them. Horses, pigs, chickens, cattle, goats, and even house cats were, prior to 1492, completely alien to the Native Americans, with the colonizers from the east bringing these animals with them. The one thing the natives shared with the European conquerors, however, were...
What do you think, like, early humans, we originated from this rat type thing. Let me look it up. Yeah, this thing right here. This was us.
dogs. But the story of these animals and what happened to them is something scientists and historians are still struggling to grasp and understand. Hello there guys, and welcome back to another installment of Trey the Explainer. The triumph of the dogs. Canines, or as I like to call it, a dog, have shared a long history with us strange bipedal monkeys for tens of thousands of years, to the point the bonds we humans have formed with cats and horses would look like meager footnotes by comparison. All the dogs of today were domesticated from wild Eurasian wolves. The exact timing and location of dog domestication is largely a mystery. It might not have been a single event in a single location, but several. Though it most likely occurred in Western, Central, or East Asia, sometime between 15,000 to 30,000 years ago. Wherever it occurred, it did so in the Old World, when humans were beginning to migrate to other parts of the globe, the humans taking their domesticated buddies with them as they did so. They notably bred them into different populations, favoring certain traits over others to best suit the jobs given to them.
What is that, a Rottweiler? I think.
By the region. A longer snout, a flatter face, poofy fur, a desire to bring things back to their owners. Over the ensuing thousands of years, dogs have been incorporated into almost every human society all around the world, in a myriad of diverse and unique forms, from hunter-gatherers to state-level societies. From the Egyptians and their extinct Tessem, to Polynesians and their Kori, which were brought on voyages across the Pacific Ocean, to medieval Europeans with their game dogs, hounds, and retrievers, and the Americas were, and still are, no different. The breeds of America. European colonists, bringing their own dogs from the Old World, noted that the countless indigenous societies and cultures of the Americas already had their own furry, not that kind of furry, pets as well, prior to their arrival. In many ways, the use of dogs in the Americas before contact very much paralleled their usage in the Old World. Descriptions made by these explorers tell us that the Native Americans created many distinct breeds from these animals to best suit their needs. On the Great Plains, village dogs were known to participate in hunts for small animals like rabbits. In the north, the Talton bear dog was used by some cultures to hunt animals many times larger than themselves. It is said that though this breed could be gentle and kind to smaller animals and humans, it had enough courage to face a fully grown grizzly, recalling the tales of the Rhodesian Ridgeback breed of the Old World's ability to keep lions at bay. The small dogs would be carried in pouches.
Not one-on-one though, like, I'm sure there's a couple of dogs that, like dog breeds that could take out a bear, like in a pack, like a pack of German Shepherds, like 10 of them or 7 to 10 of them maybe. And like maybe it's a small one or a black bear.
pouches by humans during hunts, only to spring out and attack when the prey was spotted. The chiribaya, or the Peruvian shepherd dog, was used by the pre-contact chiribaya culture of Peru for the purpose of a herding dog, a New World analogy for the border collie breed. Only in America, it guarded llamas and alpacas instead of sheep and goats. The Innu of eastern Canada used the Innu canoe hunting dog, a small breed that would sit in the belly of the canoe and jump into the water to catch shot fowl, only to return to the vessel with the bird in their jaws, much like a golden retriever. Other uses for dogs by First Peoples baffled and shocked European societies during the era of colonization. Dogs throughout the Americas were often used as pack animals, notably as sled dogs, most likely substituting a role held by horses and cattle in the Old World. The Greenland dogs, Malamutes, and Huskies, strong and reliable, and used primarily in the icy north amongst the Inuit peoples. One observer, when noting the dogs of the Dakota people, said, "The number and utility of these faithful dogs is sometimes astonishing, as they count hundreds, each bearing a portion of the general household goods." Dogs were also used for various religious ceremonies and medical purposes throughout the New World. Chihuahuas, in addition to a use I will address in a second, appear to have functioned as hot water bottles, relieving and dispersing pain to injured areas, with their application to a painful or ill region believed to heal that region amongst the Aztecs. The Salish wool dog of northern British Columbia were prized by the Coast Salish peoples. Great lengths were taken by these societies to keep populations of this breed as pure as possible, sometimes keeping them on isolated islands or in fenced-in caves to separate them from other breeds, feeding them raw and cooked salmon as well. Seems a lot of special treatment for a dog as small as a Pomeranian. Well, as it turns out, because the Salish peoples had no domesticated sheep to use and wild goats were far too difficult to catch, wool dogs were often used for just that, for their wool. Every year in May or June, the little dogs would be sheared, and their fur used to construct greatly sought-after ceremonial blankets. So good were these dog hair blankets that some say they could be as valuable as a human slave. One use of dogs by some Native Americans.
Whoa. I did not think that would be the topic in this video.
Societies that revolted European onlookers was that of dog meat in food. The consumption of dog meat in cultures throughout the world and throughout time has varied greatly. Just like with many foods, norms associated with what foods one can and cannot eat is largely culturally determined. Just look at cattle meat in today's societies. European society generally found the consumption of dog meat to be considered a major taboo, even during times of famine. For example, William Clark on the expedition, unlike Lewis and the rest, refused to eat a dog even during a period of starvation due to cultural reasons. Some cultures in the Americas held very similar views. The Comanche, for example, saw dog meat as a forbidden food and its consumption as taboo. Other cultures saw dog meat as a delicacy only to be eaten at certain times of cultural significance.
Is that dog meat right there on my screen? Bro, I feel like I'm committing a taboo just looking at this.
And others still consume them on a more regular and routine basis, with varying degrees of all in between. Hernan Cortez, if he can be trusted, wrote that the little dogs, most likely those tiny adorable chihuahuas, were raised by the Aztecs alongside rabbits and deer for eating, suggesting those little buggers were originally used for a very different purpose, just like guinea pigs.
That's what you were choosing, bro? Like, not even one with like a little meat on their bones, like a chihuahua? That's what you're eating?
Once were. Yummy. Jokes aside, it is important to try not to judge these societies on this ground. An anthropologist must look at things through the lens of cultural relativism, where societies make sense within their own cultural context, and there is not a right way to do things culturally speaking. We only find the consumption of dogs and guinea pigs gross because we are part of a society that considers that taboo. Our minds are indoctrinated to think that this is the correct way to view the world. An Aztec might note the same thing about us when looking at some of the weird stuff we eat. An interesting example of this can be seen in the account of Fanny Kelly, who was held captive and lived amongst the Sioux of the Great Plains. If her account can be trusted, she found her captives' treatment of their companions paradoxical. How could they love and value their companions so much, yet eat them at the same time?
Right.
Perhaps an outsider to society can never truly understand. North America even has its own dingoes, wild dogs without owners for centuries that roam mostly the isolated forests and swamps along the Georgia-South Carolina border. The Carolina dogs, or the American dingoes, are a shy and reclusive breed that prefers to keep to the wilds, as they have done for many years. And there were other kinds still, and likely ones never properly recorded by European observers. All these being dotted across the tundras, plains, mountains, and valleys, jungles, and deserts of pre-contact Americas. These dog breeds are known to science collectively as pre-contact dogs, or PCDs, and as we will discuss later, are set apart from all other surviving dogs out there, particularly those of the Old World. But as you may have noticed, most of these breeds are no longer around today. What happened to them, and where did they come from exactly? Dog Eat Dog World. With their horses and their guns, the Europeans brought with them germs, and we know that the human inhabitants of the Americas suffered greatly for it. Before Columbus, the two continents were filled to bursting with probably somewhere between 10 to 100 million people. The exact calculations are unclear. Within a few centuries after contact, that number was in the hundreds of thousands. So potent was the power of diseases completely unknown to the New World and its people. There is a lesser-known side to this story, with a lesser-known victim, however. The humans brought...
90% of Native Americans died when the Europeans came. That's crazy.
Human diseases, and so did the animals bring animal diseases. The European dogs carried with them
just from
old-world
diseases
bacteria and viruses that ran rampant and likely decimated the populations of pre-contact dogs. The simple explanation is that by the time colonists arrived and took the time to observe these Indian dogs, they had largely been driven to extinction and subsequently replaced by the new European dogs that had been imported, with some intermixing of the two populations occurring as well. A situation that is startlingly similar to what happened to the humans of the New World, their owners. The specifics of this period are poorly understood, even to this day, but one thing is clear: pre-contact dogs vanished almost completely, on a scale even worse than their human owners experienced, with apparently only a few holdouts that built up an immunity to these diseases and endured. This eradication of pre-contact dogs might have been more than just disease-driven, with some historians suggesting European attitudes might have driven the favoring of old world lineages over new ones, as well as the quote-unquote persecution of said lineages. In any case, it appears that these rare few survivors include Alaskan Malamutes, Inuit sled dogs, Greenland dogs, Chihuahuas, the hairless dogs of Central and South America, and lastly those feral Carolina dogs.
So we're missing some of the dog breeds that we were supposed to have.
Though recent evidence might contest this. Despite these select few, all the other dog breeds of the New World, the wool dogs and bear dogs and canoe hunting dogs, became extinct and no longer exist for us to admire. And what a shame that is. Nowadays, all but a tiny fraction of the dogs you see walking down the streets in American cities, or neighborhoods, or parks, are descended from these legendary pre-contact dogs. The vast majority will descend from old world breeds in stock, primarily European, an entire race of creatures disappearing from the earth. Crazy to think that what happened to humans on a macro scale was essentially exactly what happened to man's best friend. Origins. Where did these dogs come from? The origins of these vanished pre-contact dogs were the subject of debate for centuries. Many of these Native American dogs before their full disappearance was noted by early European recorders as distinct from the dogs brought over from Europe, Africa, and Asia. Native American dogs on the Great Plains were said to resemble and sound like American wolves. The canines of the Arikara people, for instance, were described by ones as nothing more than the domesticated wolf. I have often mistaken wolves for Indian dogs. Another noted their voice is not a proper barking, but a howl. Some believe the dogs were partly descended from wolves that have mixed with the dogs. And for a while, scientists thought similar. Where exactly did these animals come from, and how did they end up in the Americas? Well, up until recently, two theories were put forth for their origins. It was often speculated that the dogs of the Americas were descended from American wolves, which were then domesticated by the indigenous humans independently from those of Eurasia. And rather than descending from the Eurasian wolves of the Old World, they descended from American wolves. Others held to the theory that these pre-contact dogs were in fact closest related to Eurasian dogs, and were only brought to the Americas alongside with the Native Americans when they entered the continent sometime around 30,000 to 15,000 years ago, across the Bering Land Bridge from Asia. It was only with DNA testing centuries later that the true origins of these doggos was determined. Surprisingly, much of this testing was only conducted a few years ago, one of the most intriguing studies to date only being published last year. During such studies, DNA was extracted from mummies, skeletons, and other remains across the Americas belonging to pre-contact dogs, before they declined in populations or became extinct, which were then compared with that of living dogs in homes, villages, feral populations, and so on. Wolves, both Eurasian and American coyotes. Several fascinating things, some of which greatly unexpected, were discovered through such testings. First of which was that the latter theory of pre-contact dog origins was correct. Pre-contact dogs were in fact closer related to Eurasian dogs than they were to American wolves. The dogs of
So the European and Indian dogs were bred more, so they're less related than yeah, that would make sense.
Pre-Columbian America are in fact dogs from the Old World brought to the New, albeit through a different route than those the Europeans brought over. However, from there, things get slightly more complicated. The genetic evidence showed that not all pre-contact dogs were the same. There were notable distinctions between the Arctic dogs of the north of America, notably Greenland dogs, Alaskan Huskies, and those of more southern regions. Geneticists determined that domesticated dogs entered the Americas through a series of at least 4 independent migrations that created these
when dogs were bipedal
genetic distinctions in New World dog populations. The first migration they noted was the one that brought over what can truly be called the original quote-unquote pre-contact dogs. These dogs were closest related to the prehistoric remains of the 9,000-year-old dogs unearthed on the Siberian island of Zhukov in northeastern Asia. This seems to suggest that much like their human owners, pre-contact dogs originated from populations from Asia, the canines themselves likely originating from somewhere in Northeast Asia. These dogs appear to have been brought into the Americas after humans had already settled on the continent, splitting from their Asian cousins sometime between 17,500,000 and 13,000 years ago, and remaining in relative isolation. This population appears to be the ancestors of everything from the wool dogs of British Columbia, to the wolf-like dogs of the Great Plains, to the Chihuahuas of the Aztecs. A second independent migration occurred around 1000 CE, when the Thule culture reintroduced dogs again when they migrated once again across Asia and into the Arctic. Many Arctic dogs, particularly those of Greenland populations, are the descendants of this reintroduction. Though these Arctic dogs were very closely related to the pre-contact dogs of several thousand years ago, coming from Asia once again, they were genetically distinct from them, and it shows. The third migration was that of European dogs across the Atlantic, which we spoke of earlier, carrying diseases that decimated
So the average husky or Alaskan Malamute or whatever you want to call it, they're like descendants from the Asian population that were brought over, not the actual original dog breed.
Populations of the prior 2 migrations and later replacing them. The fourth and last migration was that of the husky dog during the early 1900s. Siberian Huskies, once again brought from northeastern Asia, were introduced into Alaska in response to the Alaskan gold rush, which attracted miners and workers from across the Bering Strait. I told you, things get complicated, but the DNA found in these dogs records this long, complicated history, and it's fascinating. Now, the other very curious and somewhat perplexing finding these studies have found is how little of these initial prehistoric pre-contact dogs survives within dog populations today. Scientists were somewhat surprised to discover
This is a crazy photo.
That almost no dogs alive today are descended from pre-contact dogs, or have any trace of their DNA. Shockingly, this was true even for many of those quote-unquote surviving authentic indigenous breeds. I quote, "The majority of modern American dog populations, including 138 village dogs from South America and multiple quote-unquote native breeds, possess no detectable traces of pre-contact dog ancestry." A further study sampling 590 individual dogs only found 2 modern American dogs, a Chihuahua and a mixed breed from Nicaragua, that carried the mitochondrial haplotypes indicative of pre-contact dog ancestry. This suggests pre-contact dog ancestry only accounts for less than 2% of all modern American dog populations.
Damn.
European dogs have almost completely, to a startling degree, replaced the original indigenous dogs, which have virtually vanished genetically. This is very strange, as it seems to paradoxically imply that the few surviving quote-unquote native breeds are in fact fakes with minimal to no genetic traces to their ancient pre-contact roots. From ancient artwork and accounts, we know that these breeds, like the Chihuahua, existed long before contact, but the surviving representatives don't appear to be pre-contact themselves. They're largely, if not entirely, European.
How is that possible unless like a country or ginormous population like went and like purposely like got rid of them?
They're fakes, at least they appear to be genetically. The few American breeds that can claim descent from pre-contact dogs, at least for the moment, are Carolina dogs, Alaskan Huskies, Alaskan Malamutes, Greenland dogs, and of course those yummy little Chihuahuas.
Okay, so the Alaska, from what I said earlier, was false. Like the Alaskan Malamute is a legitimate pre-contact dog, but what did he say? Did he say the Husky was pre-contact as well?
Huskies, Alaskan Malamutes, Greenland dogs, and of course those yummy little Chihuahuas. They appear to be authentic, but only with
there are fake versions of them, but there are authentic
traces of their original heritage, largely watered down by the European replacers.
Yeah.
The hairless breeds of Mexico and South America, and the yellow dogs of Peru, claimed to be the descendants of the Cheribaya dogs, have been so far shown to be of European heritage, with no detectable traces to pre-contact mummy specimens and skeletons.
Yeah.
It's pretty dang weird. Are these Native American breeds even Native American after all? The historical evidence shows they are. However, the modern versions of these breeds don't appear to be, despite the resemblance. Pre-contact dogs are still around us, just incredibly, incredibly rare, and almost undetectable in the modern day. But perhaps the strangest discovery concerning these Native American dogs has to be that of CTVT. How a cancer has preserved an entire lineage. Canine transmissible venereal tumor, or CTVT, is a type of contagious cancer clone that can be spread between canines during mating.
Thank God.
It's effectively the worst STD out there for dogs because living cancer cells can be transferred from one individual to another, infecting them with the clone, after which the process is repeated. The clone keeps on transferring and transferring from one to the other, like Cheap Trick. It's hard to describe for us humans because at least at the moment it's not something our species has to worry about, because it's not really a disease of the viral or bacterial variety as we know them. Essentially, what happened was somewhere in the distant past, a single quote-unquote founder dog, let's just say his name is Chad, possessed a tumor cell in its body through a mutation.
Yeah, he's like the ultimate predator.
This cancer cell replicated and replicated, growing into a tumor. Now, these tumors contain this dog's DNA, and are technically a part of that dog in the same way your liver or heart is, but these tumors were rogues. When this dog mated, and we know Chad did, through some special means, tumor cells transferred to his partner and lived off the other animal, after which the process repeated by jumping to another host through more mating, the cancer continuing to create clones of itself on each of its hosts, and so on and so on and so on, all the while remaining genetically unrelated from said hosts, all these cancer clones containing Chad's original DNA. This cancer, known as CTVT, has essentially become a unicellular, asexually reproducing pathogen, despite technically being a type of dog. Though it functions more like a virus now, and it only appears as a disgusting growth, its DNA is dog DNA, and this gross cancer is, at least genetically, a living thing, just like your little pupper. Despite the original founder dog Chad itself dying thousands of years ago, clones of its cancerous cells are still circulating and replicating alive and well to this day. The founder dog has effectively become immortal, Henrietta Lacks style. Imagine if your finger was cut off but kept on creating more and more cells that had your DNA long after you died. CTVT has spread amongst dogs all throughout the globe, from the Americas to Europe to Asia to Africa to Australia, and the contagious cancer continues to spread right this very moment. You might ask what all this has to do with pre-contact dogs. Well, as geneticists have found through analysis of the DNA of the cancer, the founder dog from which the cancer originates and possesses its DNA is prehistoric. CTVT is the oldest cancer known in nature, with the founder dog likely living around 11,000 years ago. Comparing the CTVT founder dog's DNA with other dog breeds, I guess this cancer is technically a breed of dog, get on it American Kennel Club, found that the founder dog was in fact, drumroll please, closest related to pre-contact dogs, if not being a pre-contact dog itself. That's right, baby. A weird, contagious cancer has more authentic indigenous ancestry than your Chihuahua. This cancer still has the DNA that once belonged to an individual Native American dog, or a dog extremely closely related to them, and still, after all these years, is still technically alive. Its cells and technically a part of its body are still,
That was revenge from, like, all of the Native American dog breeds getting wiped out.
Still living. A cancer circulating around the world, jumping from host to host, is one of the last remaining trace of its kind, the sole pure-blooded survivor of the Native American dogs. Imagine that. Ironic that diseases and viruses almost eliminated the Native American dogs, and yet it is a disease that is one helping to preserve them. I guess it's the Native American dog's revenge, though they have almost completely been replaced. Because one of them decided to turn into a unicellular pathogen, a part of their lineage lives on and inflicts itself on the conquerors themselves. Sounds like something straight out of science fiction. I'm reminded of dystopian futures where people upload their consciousness to computers in hopes of preserving themselves. The founder dog, I guess, has done something along those lines. Isn't biology fascinating and more bizarre than you ever would have dreamed? And so the CTVT cancer clone endures, forever infecting and replacing itself for the foreseeable future, if not eternity. The founder dog lives on, Chad, a remnant of this once diverse and great branch of man's best friend. So there you have it, the weird, tragic, and yet confusing story of the Native American dogs. We are still just beginning to scratch the surface of this mysterious and cryptic breed that has been largely lost to history. So hopefully we'll only learn more from here. Alright, thank you for enjoying this installment of Trailer Explained.
That was a good video. Yeah, I definitely subscribed. That is insanity. And a lot of information I did not know.
J.A.
Rabies situation is insane.
Is a 50-year-old man presenting to the emergency room with anxiety, hypersalivation, and paresthesia. Para meaning deviation, like how it's used in paranormal, and aesthesia meaning feeling. A deviated feeling. In this case, he had a horrible burning sensation in his forearms, but nothing was burned there. He can't speak to the admitting nurse. He has a hard time forming words. He's foaming at the mouth. His neck muscles are rigid, and clearly something is wrong with his brain. For 15 years, Jay had been taking an herbal supplement for general health. These tablets fixed his breathing problems, he thought, and he took these at least 3 times a week, every week. 3 years ago, J.A. presented to the emergency room because something was wrong. He was dizzy and constantly out of breath, and a blood test found out why. His kidneys had completely shut down. This isn't surprising given the supplement that he had been taking for 12 years. The active ingredient herb is from a family called Aristolochiaceae. Ancient herbal wisdom may have known this to be a very take-sparingly remedy, or better yet, just topical, skin only. You probably weren't supposed to take it long-term, or even really put it inside of your body in the first place, because it has aristolochic acid. This is nephrotoxic, nephro referring to the kidneys, explaining why J.A.'s kidneys were shutting down. Aristolochic acid inserts itself into kidney cell DNA. It turns the kidneys into a stiff, fibrous shell incapable of functioning normally, explaining J.A.'s kidney failure. But doctors didn't know he had been taking this supplement. He didn't tell them that because he didn't think anything of it. It was such a minor detail of his everyday life, he never gave it a second thought. Doctors start him on dialysis. This is hooking him up to a machine so that it can filter his blood for him. This will remove the wastes that should have been taken care of by his kidneys. If those wastes build up in his body, they can rot his body from the inside and very quickly shut down his heart and end everything. But this is a temporary fix while they wait for a kidney transplant. He has to go to dialysis multiple times a week. 3 years pass. J.A.'s day finally arrives. A kidney is available. In rural Idaho, a middle-aged man was found unresponsive in his bed. His heart had stopped beating. His family was able to find him just in time for paramedics to arrive and resuscitate him. But it wasn't in time to actually save him. At the hospital, he never regained consciousness. He was declared brain dead. On hospital day 5, that man was removed from life support. His organs were recovered and prepared, and his left kidney was determined to be a match for J.A. At a hospital in Ohio, the medical team prepares J.A. It's time for the kidney transplant. Just 1 kidney. It'll be enough that he won't need dialysis anymore, at least for now. Surgery's done, and J.A. seems to recover nicely.
That's crazy. They're just like shipping human body parts across the country legally.
Transplanted kidney is called a graft. J.A. is the host. The immune system attacks things that aren't supposed to be in the body. If J.A. just got a new organ, then the immune system will think that that organ isn't supposed to be there. The immune system will attack that organ and destroy it while setting off a massive inflammatory reaction inside J.A.'s body if nothing is done. This organ rejection is called graft versus host disease, but we can do something about this. Medicines were given to suppress J.A.'s immune system. 3 of them do 3 different things. First, steroids. They decrease white blood cells. They decrease signals that kick off the immune system. Second, another specialized medicine goes into the white blood cells and stops their genes from producing immune signal molecules. Third, a final medicine stops white blood cells from replicating. It doesn't destroy them.
I didn't realize this video was gonna get so in-depth. It's been a long time since I've watched
It just stops them from becoming too numerous. This ensures that the kidney has time to acclimate inside J.A.'s body, that blood vessels can regrow to that kidney, and that his body can recover well. On the flip side, this triplet neuters the immune system and predisposes him to infections, including ones you're not supposed to have in immunocompetent people. But everything seems great. A few weeks pass. J.A. is feeling excellent and recovering well. But 5 weeks after the transplant, something was wrong. Hey, quick question. Have you learned a couple things from this video so far?
This is an ad.
With a giant line waiting behind him, and the pee fright was too intense. He started becoming disoriented to time and place. When everything started making sense again, he noticed that he was shaking. At his computer, J.A. had poured himself a glass of water to take his medicine. When he tried to drink, he suddenly choked. It just didn't go down the right way for some reason. On the floor, gasping for air, water had gotten into his lungs. He couldn't stop coughing. Anytime he even brought a glass of water to his face, he'd have an overwhelming gagging sensation. When he'd force himself to sip the water, he would shake uncontrollably. The water, cupped in his mouth, would spill out, and he'd gasp for air, unable to swallow the water or breathe until finally he'd spit it out.
So what, this guy got rabies from, like, his supplement? Like, he didn't even get bit by a dog or anything?
Needed to drink the water because he needed to take his immunosuppressant medicines, but finally, he just totally gave up and stopped taking them. One morning, J.A. was found on the floor in the bathroom shaking and screaming, his neck jerking in unnatural ways so shocking to his wife that she calls for 911 and he's brought to the emergency room where we are now. At examination, doctors find a J.A. with fever, stiff neck, agitation, and paresthesia. The brain is involved, the nerves are involved, and fever indicates an inflammatory process. So, if he's on immunosuppressants because he's 5 weeks post-kidney transplant, then everything put together points to meningitis. Itis meaning an inflammation of the meninges, the membrane covering the brain and the spinal cord. Neck stiffness is a telltale sign. The fever is the immune system trying to react to a pathogen that got through because the immune system was getting held down to protect his transplanted kidney. There's one way for them to tell if this is meningitis. The brain and the spinal cord are surrounded by cerebrospinal fluid, CSF. In meningitis, this fluid will be infected. It might have protein and sugar floating around in it. Doctors stick a needle in his back to collect a sample of this fluid, but there's a problem. It'll take about a day to grow out detectable amounts of bacteria or fungus from it. If they wait for the results to come back before giving him treatment, a whole day's worth of pathogen could grow. And that can be life or death, but there can be other signals. When they look at the fluid, it wasn't cloudy. Analysis didn't show abnormal amounts of protein or glucose. It all seemed normal. An MRI shows that something is happening. It's not normal, but it's also not clear what it is. It does kind of look like it could be a viral infection, if anything. Given all of this information, JA is started on antiviral medicine and empiric antibiotics, doing nothing, while all the evidence points to something is life-threatening, especially at a time like this when every second counts. But something else entirely was going on. On the second day in the hospital, J.A. was found in his bed, choking on his own spit. When he tried to cough, he would choke again. At times, he'd shake violently in bed, but then he became unresponsive. Doctors sedate him and put a tube down his throat to protect his airway and so that a machine can breathe for him. When they look at the test results for the bacteria and fungus from his cerebrospinal fluid, they found out this isn't meningitis. So, what could it be? Doctors had written a problem list. They need to reason out why each one is not the problem and figure out from there. Now that it's not meningitis, it narrows down the list. J.A.'s problem started 7 days ago. This pace is important. If he deteriorated like this in 7 seconds instead of 7 days, he'd have a completely different problem. 7 seconds usually means some kind of blood vessel problem, like a clot blocking flow or a bleed. If it took 7 years, that's a different problem in the opposite direction. It could be neurodegenerative, like amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, ALS, or it could be a tumor. But the MRI didn't show a tumor. There was no brain bleed. This means he has an infection, but which one? Tetanus causes muscle spasms. These can make it impossible to swallow, but tetanus doesn't usually cause an altered mental state. Diphtheria is caused by a bacterial toxin that strips off myelin sheath from nerves. It can cause problems swallowing, but it also makes it so that patients have trouble moving their eyes, their tongue, their face can start to droop. None of those happening to J.A. Botulism is also caused by a bacterial toxin, but it paralyzes the patient, and J.A. isn't paralyzed, leaving one final infection to be the possible problem. Rabies is an infection. It's from a virus. Patients are first incubated after contact with rabid animal saliva. That saliva has to get into the body, so it's from a bite or a scratch that breaks skin.
Was it the transferred organ that guy had rabies and they didn't realize?
And then the virus settles for weeks, and then the prodrome appears. Pro here meaning early, and drome from Greek referring to road or path down which one is headed. This is the early set of symptoms that worsen as the patient descends into the acute neurologic phase, followed by coma, and then the end. J.A.'s extreme aversion to water, dubbed as hydrophobia, is unique to rabies. The other infections don't usually cause this. His other symptoms were all consistent with rabies too, but there's a problem. J.A. never came into contact with any animals. He didn't have pets, he didn't go outdoors. Prior to transplant, he was sitting in dialysis for several hours, several days a week, and post-transplant, he didn't leave the house either. Human rabies is extremely rare in the whole United States. Just 125 cases had been reported in the
human rabies? I did not know that was a thing.
58 years from 1960 to 2018. So how did
You're
he
telling me
get
people
it?
are getting
Doctors
human
contacted the Ohio
rabies?
Department of Health and Centers for Disease Control, and very quickly, J.A.'s saliva, his blood, his CSF, and other bodily samples were collected and sent to the CDC. Rabies virus RNA was detected in his saliva and his CSF, confirming rabies. When they sequenced the viral genome, they determined the rabies that J.A. had was from a silver-haired bat. But when public health officials interviewed J.A.'s family, they confirmed J.A. never had any contact with any bats or any other animal. So where did this virus come from? Health officials looked at J.A.'s medical record. His only contact from the outside world that broke his skin was the transplanted kidney. They traced back to the kidney donor in Idaho. They pulled up his medical record, no mention of rabies, but he was a middle-aged man who just suddenly died in his bed. Why did that happen? Idaho Department of Health and Welfare went to the donor family to interview them, and this—
I think I was right. He had, the original owner of the kidney had rabies.
This is where they found out everything. In December 2024, just days before he suddenly died in bed, the organ donor in Idaho suddenly became confused with difficulty swallowing and walking, hallucinations, and he had a stiff neck, just like J.A. did. 5 weeks before, in late October, the man was outside his house with a kitten. A skunk had approached them. Its body language was in a way that it was going to attack. The man kicked the skunk to protect the kitten, but it fought back until it fell unconscious. But it had scratched the man's shin in the encounter and drew some blood. The man was pretty sure it was only a scratch, not a bite, but the fact that it broke skin is a cause for concern. It's just that he didn't know it at the time, and this is what started this tragedy. Rabid animals will—
Any animal breaks skin on me, bro, wild animal, I'm going to the doctor. That's, yeah, I'm not taking
hypersalivate. Virus is in the saliva, either from a bite or a scratch. Because these animals lick their claws, the infected saliva can make its way into human bodies when skin is broken. Rabies virus replicates in muscle cells at the site of inoculation. At the neuromuscular junction where nerves connect to the muscles, the virus gains access into the nerves. They migrate a few inches every day until they reach the spinal cord, where they start moving towards the brain. This period is the incubation and prodromal stage where bad things start to happen. In the spinal cord, virus moves very quickly. It gets to the brain, and then very quickly it spreads out widely through the nerves. In highly innervated places like the salivary gland,
you gotta cut that shit off. You gotta amputate before it gets to the brain.
viral replication explodes. Viral shedding gets all over the body. The damage that rabies physically does to the brain appears mild when compared to other diseases, at least from what we know at the moment. By the time the medical team did the brain MRI for J.A., the diffuse, inconclusive finding may have been the rabies already there, causing dysfunction rather than brain death. And when rabies spreads, should that person become an organ donor after it's over, that virus will make its way into the organ recipient's body, infecting them too. The reason this is particularly scary is that neither the patient nor the medical team knows rabies is even involved at all until it's too late. The donor, who was previously healthy, died suddenly with nothing on their medical record. By the time the organ recipient develops symptoms, viruses are already in the brain, spread throughout the body, and the medical team will have wasted time ruling out the most obvious problems caused by complications post-organ transplant. This was a chain reaction of unfortunate events culminating in the final disaster. Health authorities tested a sample of what was left of the organ donor's right kidney and detected rabies virus RNA consistent with the silver-haired bat rabies variant, consistent with the one found in J.A., explaining how J.A. got it. How do you treat something like this? time matters. When the kidney donor got the skunk scratch, he had just a window of days where he could have gotten it checked out and received post-exposure prophylaxis. There's two medicines here. The first is antibodies that neutralize the virus, and the second tells the body to produce even more of those antibodies so that viruses that have already replicated can be neutralized and that the body can continue to neutralize viruses for years afterwards. When health authorities tested serum samples from the organ donor that were collected when he presented to the hospital before he died, they found out he didn't have any rabies virus antibodies. This confirms his family's statement that he didn't seek out any treatment after the skunk encounter. But it also tells us that his body didn't have enough time to, or wasn't able to, react to this infection. But J.A. is still alive right now. Is there anything that can be done for him? In the hospital, blood tests find that J.A.'s body has produced rabies antibodies. However, by the time he presented to the emergency room, his disease had become so advanced, virus had replicated all throughout his nervous system and the rest of his body. It had come in from the transplanted kidney, traveled through the nerves, got into his spinal cord, and from there reached his brain, the nerves sending signals from his brainstem to his heart, quickly becoming dysfunctional because of the virus. His advanced presentation, conflated by a difficult diagnosis in a disease that doesn't have much treatment this late in the course of illness, made it difficult for the medical team to do much more outside of supportive care. But J.A.'s case wasn't the only exposure. Public health officials found out multiple people received cornea tissue from the eye from the donor in Idaho. 3 patients, one each from California, Idaho, and New Mexico, were recipients. This too can transmit rabies. These patients were tracked down, the grafts were removed, and post-exposure prophylactic therapy were given to them. A 4th patient in Missouri had corneal transplant scheduled from this donor, but luckily, health authorities were able to stop it in time. The healthcare workers who came into contact with J.A., who came into contact with the Idaho donor, and who came into contact with the 3 cornea recipients were also identified and given post-exposure prophylactic therapy. The unfortunate part about the situation is that it isn't the first time it's happened in the United States. In 2004, doctors at a hospital in Texas diagnosed 3 organ transplant patients.
You're telling me this has happened before and they haven't just started checking every time?
Who got encephalitis. A 4th patient was also diagnosed after receiving part of a blood vessel during a liver transplant. All 4 patients became progressively obtunded and lapsed into coma and then died within 50 days of their transplant. At the time the patients expired, doctors were stumped. When they did their diagnostic tests, everything was ruled out. They asked the CDC and the Texas Department of State Health Services for help because these all happened at the same place. This means that there could have been some kind of outbreak happening, and when investigators looked, they found out all 4 patients had received organs from the same donor, and that donor had contracted rabies. When he died, there were no mention of rabies in his medical record, but they detected rabies virus RNA in his body when they tested for it, and the organ recipients who died had the exact same rabies virus RNA in their bodies too. In countries where rabies is more common, this situation of infection from organ transplant is more well known, and J.A. would have the same experience as these other rabies-infected organ recipients. On hospital day 7, J.A.'s heart stopped beating. Doctors rushed into his room to try to resuscitate him, but no matter what medicines they gave him and the CPR, they weren't able to resuscitate him. At autopsy, his brain samples were sent to the CDC. Confirmation of his rabies diagnosis by the CDC laboratory happened after he passed away. By the time he presented to the emergency room, the disease was so advanced and the virus had spread so deep, he only had a few days left. Investigators sequenced the RNA they found in J.A. samples and found out it was from the same silver-haired bat variant as was found in the Idaho kidney donor's body. They determined that a bat infected the skunk. The rabid skunk scratched the donor, infecting him, and then his organ donation subsequently infected J.A., and J.A., being someone post-transplant, didn't go outside, didn't interact with animals, was on immunosuppressants, could have had a variety of other, more obvious infections and related issues, but instead, it was the one infection that no one was thinking of at the time. After his case was published in December 2025, CDC had already been examining guidance on what to do so that this doesn't happen again. There isn't anything standard right now, but they want to raise awareness, especially in the situation where an organ donor had acute
Damn, yeah, that was a good video. Oh yeah, I'm not subscribed to this channel, but I will, because I've definitely watched videos in the past of him. I think that's a good time to call the stream. Yeah.